Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys.
Released in 2012, the Lego Lord of the Rings game brings together two of my favourite worlds, and very successfully at that. The art style and graphics still look great, the inclusion of film dialogue during the cutscenes works really well, and the classic Lego humour adds a nice twist to some pretty emotionally heavy moments. And then best of all, in my opinion, is the ability to explore the massive open hub world of Middle-earth. But then there's also this. Lego Lord of the Rings follows the original storyline of the trilogy, with the game split across 18 levels, 6 for each of the Fellowship of the Ring, 2 Towers, and Return of the King. And this release saw the addition of quite a few new features. There are side quests to complete, blacksmith items to craft, and a treasure trove full of accessible collectibles. And on top of this, each key character has a unique ability, from Frodo illuminating dark areas to Legolas's bow and parkour skills, Sam's elven rope, and Gimli's preference for being thrown axe first through the air to smash targets, just to name a few. The achievements, as standard for LEGO games, aren't particularly challenging, they just take a while, with the biggest time commitment coming in the form of there and back again for reaching 100% completion. Most of the other 47 achievements will come along the way when going for that one. And the obvious plan to tackle this game and how I went about it is to effectively break it into 3 playthroughs. Once through the 18 levels in story mode, then again in free play, and finally mopping up everything in the overworld of Middle-earth. So I began my adventure with story mode and jumped into the prologue. The majority of the achievements in this playthrough were just those awarded for completing each level for the first time, but there were a few others I'll get to in a moment. Having never played this before, I wouldn't exactly say that I sped or sailed smoothly through each of the levels, but equally there weren't any notably difficult puzzles or sections to solve. If anything, this run is just a bit nothingy, as you know you'll have to replay all these again in the future in order to find all the collectibles. Each level contains 10 mini-kits, 3 pieces of treasure, and 1 blacksmith plan to find, and as you're playing through you'll see lots of hotspots that require those unique abilities I mentioned earlier, as well as others like Morgul bricks that can only be broken by a special blade, or magical bricks that can only be moved by Gandalf or Saruman. But even though they're technically here, you're not going to be able to get 99% of them until you come back in free play with all the relevant characters unlocked. During the 3rd level, I unlocked Where Are We Going for forming the Fellowship of the Ring, but it wasn't until the Battle of Helm's Deep that I got my first non-story related achievement. Actually 2 of them. Firstly for finishing one of Gimli's opponents as Legolas, and then again with Legolas for defeating 42 Uruk-hai. And after that, I continued on through the story, finishing up the 2 towers, and I won't go into massive details because 1, where do I even begin with Lord of the Rings and how epic it is, and 2, surely everybody knows the plot at this point, and if you don't, I definitely advise that you sit down and watch them. The next level worth mentioning is the Battle of Pelennor Fields. First of all, I got briefly scared that I'd encountered a game-breaking bug when the Witch King, instead of taking a seat on his beast, just awkwardly ran around on top of it, meaning the battle didn't actually start. Luckily, this was fixed by quitting out and loading back in. And with the Witch King taken care of, I moved into the next section and unlocked that still only counts as 1 for taking down an Oliphant as Legolas. And from there, I was back in Mordor with just 2 levels to finish. Firstly the Black Gate, and finally Mount Doom. And for those completed, I'd reached the end of playthrough 1, but I didn't even have half the achievements or gamer score yet, so still plenty to do. With the story mode ticked off, I ventured to Rivendell in the hub world and the bonus level which can be found behind a waterfall. The aim of this, just like the bonus levels in Star Wars, is to collect 1 million studs, mostly through sheer destruction. There are a few other things to do, but I didn't get stuck looking for those last couple of studs like I did in the Star Wars game. Thankfully, this one seemed much easier. And once I reached 1 million, the bonus level was complete and I unlocked the Lord of the Ring achievement and also Sauron as a playable character. And Sauron can be useful for free play because he's classed as a strong character, so has the ability to pull the orange handles. And speaking of free play, that was my next goal, to go through the story levels again, picking up all of the collectibles. But before starting that, I also purchased the Berserker, as he's able to destroy the shiny bricks, and I'm pretty sure he's also capable of taking care of the orange handles, but I didn't realise that at the time. And finally, I forged 4 mithril items with the blacksmith, which will be needed during some of the levels, for both achievements and collectibles. I actually did this part way through this playthrough, but I thought I may as well show it now, so you know what you need to do if you want to tackle the game in the same order that I did. And those items were the mithril cluster bow, the rope, the shockwave axe, and the boxing gloves. And some of the designs I already had from the story, and some I had to go back and find. But with all that out of the way, I was ready to tackle the free play mode. I just went in order again from the beginning of the game, but this time free to choose whichever character I wanted. And as I was now making use of everyone's unique abilities to fully explore the maps, I was generally having no problems collecting enough studs to fill the bar and unlock true adventurer status on each level. even without any of the multipliers, although there were a couple of exceptions to that. So back to the start again, and I actually unlocked quite a few level-based achievements whilst going through these and picking up all of the collectibles. First in the prologue, when I jumped into the fires of Mount Doom as a seal door, and then in the second level, the Black Rider, I found the Mushroom Crown treasure, and equipping Aragorn with that unlocked the Return of the Mushroom King achievement. And then on Weathertop, I completed a second cooking puzzle for some more gamer score. And then I was back in the Mines of Moria, and there's an achievement available for completing the level in under 15 minutes, which is obviously unlikely to happen when you're hunting for all the collectibles, but fortunately there's a bit of a cheesy strategy to avoid having to play through it for the third time. By simply starting up the mission, and then near enough instantly saving and quitting out, it triggers the completion and the achievement. I have no shame about taking advantage of that. The majority of those items I crafted a moment ago came in useful during the Ammon Hen level at the finale of the Fellowship of the Ring. As during the ring sequence with Frodo, you're unable to change character. There are still targets to shoot with a bow, or pull with a rope, or smash with an axe in order to get the collectibles. And this time, I managed to complete the section without getting caught by Boromir, which got me another achievement. And I finished up the Fellowship by throwing Gimli for the 30th time, unlocking Don't Tell the Elf. After that, I found the Ent Draft after befriending Treebeard halfway through the Two Towers, and hitting Pippin with it unlocked the I've Always Been Taller achievement, and I also defeated Gollum with Gollum for some more gamer score. Around this time, I had enough studs to buy the first couple of red brick multipliers, and from here I just picked up the others when I could afford them. Other than that, the most noteworthy things to happen in this playthrough were bug related. Some were funny, like being launched into the air on the back of an Ent. Some were frustrating, like having to restart a level after being stuck between a rock and a tree. And some were worrying, like when I somehow ended up with 11 out of 10 mini kits during the Pell in the Fields battle. I don't know what it is about this level, but I had fears of this locking me out of the 100% achievement. Luckily, it did end up showing the correct amount when I finished. And that left me with just 2 missions to go, and after mopping up everything in the Black Gate, I was back at Mount Doom. Sadly, it wasn't smooth sailing for me as I got all the way to the end and then realised I had no way of pulling this orange handle, as you're not able to switch character from Sam in this section, and I didn't have the meter of boxing gloves. And then just to add insult to injury, I had to quit out and restart after Gollum rode me into an invisible wall and got us both stuck. Luckily, the levels are actually pretty short when you know where you're going and not stopping for collectibles, so I quickly made it back, this time armed with the final stud multiplier red brick, and more importantly, the mithril boxing gloves, which allowed me to pick up the final treasure item. As a side note, whilst at the blacksmiths I also crafted the fire and ice bows for the Link to the Elements achievement. And after making the final dash out of Mount Doom and picking up the final mini kit along the way, I'd finished all of the level based collectibles. But before I could move on to the next part of this completion, I just had to go back to 2 previous missions and reach true adventurer status from them both. This took literally just a few seconds as I now had a 3,840 times stud multiplier, and rewarded me with the Ready for Another Adventure achievement. And that meant I had 33 of the 48 unlocked, and it was now time to tackle the massive hub world that is Middle-earth. There are 15 areas, ranging from Hobbiton to the Dead Marshes, and Minas Tirith to the Black Gate, and lots of things to discover hidden amongst all of them. I had to unlock the roaming characters, find the mithril bricks and blacksmith designs, and also complete fetch quests, which rewards a player with the red bricks. And those fetch quests require you to show an NPC a specific mithril or treasure item that can be found during the levels, so it's definitely worth saving this until last when you finished all of that and avoid too much running back and forth. I went from area to area loosely based on the order that you reach them in the story, and for the most part I'd complete an area before moving on to the next. Although towards the end I did start mixing it up a bit more, especially after I turned on the mithril brick finder, which puts markers on your screen. I also made sure to unlock each map stone when I got to a new location, as this puts all of the collectibles and points of interest on the map. And something else worth noting is when you do teleport to a location, you're given a choice of it being day or night, and some of the collectibles are only available at a certain time and won't appear otherwise, but the map does specify this. Along with the brick detection, there are a couple of other quality of life things that I picked up during this playthrough, most notably the bottomless water bucket to save myself having to find a water spot before putting out a fire, and also the stud attraction red brick. And other than that, there's not much to it, just the patience required to grind it all out. And early on I unlocked an expected journey for entering the Trollshaws area's Bilbo, and I then fished perfectly for the 20th time whilst clearing out Osgiliath. In general, most of the collectibles are easy to find, either just out in a simple to reach spot or locked behind an obvious puzzle, but on the rare occasion you'll come across a frustrating one, usually involving jumping and fighting the deceptive camera angles, or climbing high and battling against the extremely annoying bug where the game swaps to the wrong character when you're attempting to change. My next achievement was for discovering the final map stone, and then I was finally in Mordor and nearing the end of my adventure. And here I had to conquer what was unquestionably the most painful collectible by jumping across these posts. 90% of the time I seemed to hit an invisible wall jumping to the fourth one, and on the odd occasion that didn't happen, I just fell off anyway. I spent somewhere between 30 and 60 painful minutes just on this alone, but I did get there eventually. And in several of the areas, there are these timed races where you have to ride an animal through a series of gates in order to spawn a mithril brick, and I had a stroke of luck whilst doing that here, as I also unlocked the One Does Not Simply achievement for walking into Mordor. Not sure that should count as walking considering I was on the back of a sheep, but it is what it is. I then found the 30th blacksmith design, purchased the last remaining roaming characters and red brick, before ending this part of my journey in the fires of Mount Doom, picking up achievements for completing the final fetch quest and collecting all mithril bricks. And that meant that I was able to return to Bree and tick off the last crafted item, which also unlocks the blacksmith as a playable character, the only one I was missing for the achievement. And now sitting at a completion percentage of 99.8%, I returned to Hobbiton and specifically Bag End, where I just had to create a custom character, and once that was saved, up popped the There and Back Again achievement for reaching 100% total completion. This also unlocks the Newborn Lurtz character, which I have to say looks pretty damn cool. And finally, a bonus cutscene that can be triggered in the Shire, recreating the ending of the films. So now I had the big one out of the way, but there were still 5 miscellaneous achievements to mop up. Firstly, I fully kitted Sam out in pieces of treasure, although this could have been anyone. And then I travelled to Isengard, where I had to enter the area as each playable hobbit. I'm not sure exactly what triggers it, but I tried both teleporting with the map stone and running in and out of the walled area while cycling through the characters. Either way, the taking the hobbits to Isengard achievement popped eventually. After that, I used 2 of the treasure trove items, first the skeleton sword to turn someone into a skeleton, groundbreaking stuff, and then the disco file to make them dance. And honestly, I'd listen to an album of the music that this thing pumps out. And my penultimate achievement was to complete a level in co-op, but instead I just abused the trick that I used earlier for Moria, loading in with 2 controllers connected and near enough instantly saving and quitting back out for some more well-deserved gamer score. And that left me with just 1. The Delve Too Greedily achievement requires 10 billion studs to be collected, and that may seem like a lot because after doing everything else I was only at 6.5 billion, but there's a few easy ways to rack up studs very quickly. The method I used was repeating the opening section of the Pell in the Fields level, which gets anywhere from 250 to 300 million studs in just a minute and a half, if all the appropriate red bricks are turned on, those being the 5 multipliers and stud magnet. And the reason I said between 250 and 300 million is because it depends how much effort you put in. This path on horseback is actually on rails, so you could just put the controller down and still get a ton of studs, but if you're willing to do a bit of weaving, picking up the rarest studs and especially ploughing through this line of catapults, you'll maximise the gains. And once off the horse and into the Witch King fight, I'd simply run a loop collecting everything, and then quit out and repeat. And after doing that a dozen or so times, unlock the 48th and final achievement in Lego Lord of the Rings. All in all, it took me a little over 26 hours to complete, and despite some rather frustrating bugs and other moments, I'd definitely recommend it. Especially if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings, obviously. The game is great visually, the use of audio from the films works really well, and the Lego humour mixes in perfectly. But anyway, let me know your thoughts on it if you've played it, and if not, what your favourite Lego game is. I think I'm going to tackle Indiana Jones or Batman next from this series, but I do have my eye on Rock Band. And other than that, thanks for watching and see you next time.